The crazy story of Esther Arunga, news anchor who quit her job and got married to a murderer. Kenya has got some of the best female journalists in Africa, from Yvonne Okwara to Victoria Rubadiri. All these women have conquered the media space commendably. However, before they ever graced our screens, there was a babe beautiful as the Kenyan sunset with a voice so rich and smooth like velvet, ruling the TV world like a goddess. Her name was Esther Arunga, a queen so breathtaking that it even took top CNN journalist Larry Madowo weeks to gather courage just to approach her as an intern. Surprisingly, she was totally nice, a trait she used to win many hearts as she anchored primetime news on KTN. So when news reached Kenya that she was facing 25 years for the murder of her son, the whole nation was shook. How could that be? All they knew was that her husband Quincy Timberlake, main suspect, was to blame for her downfall. And they hated him for that. Because like her parents, they felt he never deserved her. Because he had snatched her from Wilson Malaba, who was engaged to her, married her against her parents' will, and turned her life upside down, dimming her rising star. How did she get here? Well, here's the gist. Esther Arunga was born to the scholarly couple of Dr. Robert Arunga, who is the chairman at Technical University of Mombasa Council, and Petroline Arunga. Her dad is also the secretary of ODM National Elections Board and chairman at his Lavington home, where he brought up Esther and her 6 siblings under strict Christian values, where plaiting hair or wearing hipsters was equivalent to treason since he is a Seventh-day Adventist. So from a little age, Esther grew up modest, but razor bright in her studies, which was evident as she aced her KCPE exams, earning a spot at the prestigious National Girls' School Kenya High. There, she performed exemplary well, and her proud dad rewarded the hard work by sending her overseas to pursue a degree in law at the University of Wollongong in Australia instead of the local universities, despite being a university don. Being a high achiever, she graduated, and like most Kenyan law grads, couldn't practice law yet, until she had joined Kenya School of Law, which she did, and got admitted later on in 2009, making her parents proud. However, finding it hard to get a job, she tried other opportunities, and being quite a confident child with a great command of English, she found herself at Capital FM, hosting the Saturday morning rock music show. There, her star started to shine, since she was surrounded by some of the best young journalists at the time who taught her the ropes of media, the likes of Ses Mutungi and Ann Kiguta. Additionally, at Capital FM, there used to be a pastor who prayed for staff every Wednesday in sessions called Morning Evolutions, since some reporters like Sean Kakungira and Isabella Katuri were ushers at his church. That pastor was Joseph Helen, and the church was Finger of God, which was for the elite, where members who were mostly celebs drank socially while enjoying music. This church that gave people freedom, unlike most churches, it was housed in an 8BR house in Runda. So when Esther Arunga met Helen during the prayers, she was excited because she was already tired of the SDA faith that felt too restrictive and demanding for someone in media. She wanted to serve God and be free, which was the main reason she joined the church after attending their Sunday service at Lanana Conference Center in Kilimani, after being invited by Pastor Joseph Helen himself, a move that was completely life-altering. Meanwhile, at Capital FM, she continued to impress her bosses with her work ethic, passion, and dedication. And within months, she was working at KTN, where Kenyans got to know about her, since she came at a time when Kenya was facing the hardest tragedy, the post-election violence. And as she anchored news, she showed compassion, which was unlike most reporters who were robotic. You could feel her in the news. This style of delivery earned her accolades as a young journalist, inspiring teens who voted for her as the best presenter of 2008 at the Chaguola Tenyes Awards show, where Prezzo the rapper landed in a chopper. Additionally, her God-given beauty also swept the hearts of many Kenyan men who wished to tap in. Apart from me, who was a kid, one such man was Quincy Timberlake, a fraudster and band singer with a fake Congolese name, who salivated every time he saw her. However, he couldn't reach her since he was already married to Rose Mueni, and they were raising their 3 boys together in South B. So all he did was kula kwa macho, hoping one day the stars will align. Luckily, one guy won Esther's heart, and that was Wilson Malaba, CEO Real Concepts, who met her at an event she was emceeing. Mans joined her Finger of God church just to win her, and gladly they got engaged. However, no sooner had they planned the wedding than while watching the popular TV show Tusker Project Fame, Quincy spotted his Kokoro primary deskmate Joseph Helen, who was a mentor. There and then he saw his op to get at Esther, and boy, he didn't let it pass him. Quincy looked for Helen's contacts and reached out wanting to join the church, which was accepted since the two were deskmates at Kokoro Primary School, and it was a beautiful reunion. However, there was a problem. The babe Quincy had come to find was engaged to a member of the church, Wilson Malaba, so he had to find out a way to get her out of that union. So he hatched a master plan like the Yahoo boy he was, since he knew the only way to do it was to win over her pastor. Because Esther was super religious, and whatever her pastor said she did, including moving out of her parents' home and living with him in his Runda residence, a move that shocked her parents. Knowing that Helen was a lover of praise, Quincy lied to him that he could get the jazz maestro nominated for Oscars, and Helen was way over the moon, not even wanting to verify, which gave Quincy the confidence to go the extra mile, where he sent a fake email to Joseph Helen pretending to be televangelist Benny Hinn, who used to send Helen newsletters every week, asking the pastor to call off the engagement of Esther Arunga to Wilson, which Helen did. Now the stage was set. Esther called off her wedding to Wilson Malaba, and like the hungry feisty he was, Quincy jumped on her ass with vibes. He knew she was the prize, so he pretended to be a top dog with connections to Tony Blair and Obama. He also said he owned a hotel in the Bahamas. And baby girl was mesmerized by the network and net worth of the young man, so before Kenyans could say, think twice, Esther was already in the loving arms of Quincy Timberlake, who married her on February 9, 2010, at the Attorney General's office. So every time the new lovers were in front of cameras, they would cuddle, kiss, and show affection. And clearly you could tell Esther was happy in this relationship. What people didn't understand is what she saw in Quincy. A question her parents asked every time they reached out to her, asking why she had called off her wedding to Malaba for Quincy. To her parents, she was bewitched. So when she resigned from her job and surprisingly announced her ambition to be deputy president of Kenya on February 16, 2010, nobody could convince her parents that she was not under some spell. This was unbelievable. Where was Esther getting these ideas from? Why was she quitting her job at the peak of her career for some stupid ambition? They wondered as they equally blamed themselves for letting her go live with Pastor Joseph Helen. Who was to blame for everything? Because ever since Esther joined his church and went to live with him, her life had turned upside down. Now he had entangled her into his ambitions, where they were announcing their vision for the country under the Placenta Party. And that was enough for her parents to send cops to their Runda home, claiming that the church was a sect, and Esther, together with others, were arrested in the home. Esther was released 2 days later, but was taken to a psychiatrist hospital owned by mental health expert Dr. Franklin Njenga, and kept there by her parents for more than 5 days, which angered her even more. So as soon as she was released, she was already blazing fire in media, suing her parents cash 300M for holding her at the psychiatrist hospital against her will. After being released from custody and psychiatrist hospital, Esther sued her parents for cash 300 million. Meanwhile, her father was moving in silence like a G, scheming on how to teach the man who poisoned his daughter a lesson. As an ODM top dog, Dr. Robert Arunga used his connections to have Quincy rearrested 2 days after his release at Joseph Helen's Runda home. The plan was to squeeze the balls that had driven Esther crazy until Quincy denounced their marriage. So Dr. Robert sought the aid of fellow SDA churchmate Otieno Kajwang to help him arrest Quincy under fabricated charges of being an illegal immigrant. Otieno Kajwang was the then Minister of Immigration, and also a deacon at the Nairobi SDA church where Esther and her parents worshipped before she left for Helen's church. Having witnessed her departure, Han Kajwang felt obligated to help his pal, so without hesitance, Quincy was picked at the Runda home and swiftly taken to Nyayo House for questioning. Church members tried following him to Nyayo, wanting to know the reason for his arrest, but this is Kenya. Mans was put into a Subaru and whisked to another location. In the new location, the only people who visited him were coppers tasked with breaking him down until he said, "Esther Arunga is not worth this pain." Lakini shock unto them, Quincy was willing to go the extra mile like Romeo. So when the sleuths belittled him by asking him to recite the national anthem and loyalty pledge more than 100 times, Quincy took it upon himself to showcase why he was a band singer. Mandem sang like Fali Ipupa. However, the sleuths were unimpressed by his vocals, so they went an extra mile in humiliating him, whereby they stripped him nude and massaged his golden balls. It was painful, but since Esther was the prize, Quincy chose not to give her up for nobody. So if it meant taking him to court, then it was well with his soul, a stand he stood by up until when he was arraigned in court. Police claimed that they didn't know Quincy's nationality, yet man's a Luo from Homa Bay, Buana, which turned out to be their plan B after having failed to break him. This plan insinuated that Quincy was an illegal immigrant using false papers, so he was supposed to be deported. This way they'd send him far away from Esther Arunga. A plan that infuriated Esther, who saw her father's hand in Quincy's case, forcing her to let the cat out of the bag about her dad. She claimed her dad was against Quincy since he wanted to marry her off to a minister for his political ambitions. A bomb that threw the media off the rumor that she was being groomed for marriage to Fidel Odinga, who was amongst the many of us who wished Esther Arunga could one time ask us, "Babe, umafunga mlango." Nonetheless, the minister lead sent the public into a guesswork frenzy that was inconclusive. Lakini, we ukiangalia poa. Who do you think this minister was considering? This is the list of all ministers during that era. Esther Arunga's bombshell about her dad raised questions about the legality of Quincy's arrest, which forced the police to drop charges and set him free. However, his freedom was tasteless, since when he went back to Runda, Joseph Helen kicked him out. This was on the basis that Helen had realized that he was a fraud and untrustworthy, using juju power on Esther Arunga to control her. So to save Esther, he kicked Quincy out of the home. But Esther was angered by this betrayal and followed Quincy to a rental apartment in town, hoping to live in peace. However, it wasn't to be, since they constantly received threats and harassment from press with fake stories forcing them to apply for asylum, which Australian government granted them since Esther had studied there. They traveled via Dubai, where they were hosted by Nancy Otieno for weeks before Quincy turned Esther against her host, just like he turned her against his parents and Helen. The couple later traveled to Australia, where Esther Arunga worked as a barrister at the Supreme Court, New South Wales, whereas Quincy joined Curtin University for a mining course. The couple was set for a new beginning, and their love blossomed even more with the birth of their son, Sinclair. The sky was now their limit away from their haters. But sadness would soon creep into their home when 2 years later, Quincy Timberlake killed his son Sinclair, under the claim that Sinclair was possessed. He smashed the boy into the wall and stepped on his stomach, trying to exorcise demons. An act that really confirmed his dealings with witchcraft, which were corroborated by witnesses in court, who said the 3-year-old boy had cuts inflicted to him by his dad even before his death. A true shock. A real shocker that was later confirmed when, instead of telling the truth about the cause of Sinclair's death, Esther opted to lie and save her husband, which begged the question, was Esther Arunga under a spell? Where was her remorse as a mother? Quincy was later jailed for 11 years, with an eligibility for parole after serving 9 years, and Esther Arunga was jailed for 10 months only. However, the question that remains unanswered is, was Esther really under a spell? Share this scrolly tale with your friends.